Welcome to Aniplot. Today anime recap is Psycho Pass, release in 2012. Like and subscribe for more recaps. On her first day as a new inspector of Unit 1, Akane Tsunemori has been assigned to handle a hostage situation. A man named Nobuo Okura has persistently avoided government-enforced rehabilitation and has kidnapped and raped an innocent woman. While searching for him with enforcer Tomomi Masayaka, Akane learns about the nature of the Dominator and the relationship between enforcers and inspectors. Enforcer Shusei Kagari finds Okura, but due to Okura's drug use, the Dominator's ability to paralyze is rendered useless. Okura flees, and Unit 1 pursues him. While holding the hostage at knife point, Okura demands that the pursuing Akane and Masayaka hand their Dominators to him. After repeated failed attempts by Okura to use the Dominator, Enforcer Shinya Kagami shoots Okura lethally with his Dominator. Unit 1 learns that the hostage's crime coefficient has risen to a high level, which necessitates her execution. Before Kagami can execute her, Akane stops him with her Dominator's paralyzer. In the end, Akane manages to calm the woman down, letting her crime coefficient lower to the point where she can be paralyzed and taken away. Akane must explain her actions in a report to her superiors. Kagami remains hospitalized as he recovers from the Dominator and forced paralysis. Akane begins a normal workday after meeting with friends and checks on his condition. Enforcer Masayaka teams up with Akane to investigate a person with a high crime coefficient in a shopping mall, and after they return, Akane shares a meal and banters with Kagari. Later, she greets Kagami, who reinforces her belief she made the right call during the hostage situation. She turns in her report with no regrets. Unit 1 is called to a drone manufacturing plant to investigate repeated cases of employee dismemberment by drones. Inspector Nobuchika Genoza and Masayaka have a heated disagreement. When Akane questions Genoza, he tells her she is a fool to treat the enforcers as colleagues. The manager of the plant swears the dismembering is an accident, but Unit 1 thinks otherwise. They notice a plant worker being bullied by the others. To prevent hacking, the plant has been isolated from all electronic networks, including the Sybil system. Without the Sybil system, they have no way to identify the killer or use their Dominators. But the enforcers cook up a wild plan that terrifies Akane, but they nevertheless succeed. Unit 1 attempts to find the culprit behind the murder of a man known online as the popular Avatar Talisman, now controlled by his killer. Akane, with the help of the Avatar Spooky Boogie, infiltrates a Camus field gathering to expose the murderer, but the ploy goes awry. Afterward, the murderer, who happens to be working with Shogo Makishima, kills the owner of Spooky Boogie and takes over her avatar as well. Genoza and his team nearly got ambushed when they tracked the murderer to a bomb-rigged hideout. Kagami, who had analyzed Akane's chats with Spooky Boogie and the guest data on the idol's communities, determines the identity of the murderer, who goes by the name of Masatake Midu. Meanwhile, Midu receives a warning not to disappoint Makishima. Masayaka, Akane, and Kagami close in on the suspect and manage to severely wound him before he flees to the safety of his avatars, who turn on him under Makishima's command. The group apprehends the suspect, and later Genoza reveals to Akane his reasons about his attitude to enforcers. It turns out that his former partner is Kagami, who used to be an inspector before his crime coefficient went high due to a cold case where one of his enforcers was killed. Genoza and his team theorize that a mastermind might have influenced the murderous actions of two recent suspects by essentially providing them with the ability and motivation to carry out their deadly desires. Kagami sees eerie similarities between these cases and the earlier unsolved case that got him demoted to enforcer, which also resulted the grotesque death of his enforcer. Sasayama. Meanwhile, Akane seeks out more information on Kagami from Kagari and Shinkara Nomori and learns about Sasayama and the cold case known as the specimen case. At a girls' school, Rikako Oreo, the enigmatic president of the art club, ensnares an unsuspecting victim and mutilates her corpse into a work of art under the tutelage of the evident mastermind, Makishima. After realizing that the recent murders and the specimen case are indeed connected, Genoza takes Kagami off the case and requests Akane to watch over him. Akane discusses Sasayama's murder with Kagami, and he shows her his one piece of evidence, a blurry image of Makishima. Meanwhile, Makishima, in a study with Toyohisa Sengyuji, reveals the circumstances of Rikako Orio's father's death and discusses the nature of the shortening life expectancy. Later, Rikako continues her crimes with the help of Makishima's colleague, Cho Gu-sung, and abducts another fellow student who is worried about her friend's disappearance. With his profiling skills, Kagami determines that the girl's school killer isn't the same murderer from the unsolved case years ago. He explains that the recent murders lack originality and pointed social commentary of the previous killings. When he and Akane realize the culprit is one of the students, they locate Rikako, who escapes when one of the teachers stops Kagami from executing her. As the enforcers try to locate her secret roads and hiding places, Rikako flees, but not before everyone discovers her latest creation. Makishima calls Rikako to tell her that she's a disappointment and has Sengyuji dispose her. In the meantime, Kagami picks up a damaged audio file, which was deliberately left by Makishima. Due to Rikako's failure, Makishima develops an interest in Kagami. Kagami, attempting to track down Makishima, takes Akane to visit his former teacher, Jauji Sega, who agrees to give her a crash course on criminal profiling. However, Genoza reprimands her harshly, which results in an argument, because Jauji has the ability to cloud people's psychopaths by merely speaking with them. Afterwards, Masayaka explains to her Genoza's attitude by revealing his past. In the meantime, Makishima discusses humanity and philosophy with Sengyuji, who in an earlier interview reveals himself to be nearly a full cyborg. Makishima gives Sengyuji his next target, Shinya Kagami. Makishima and Sengyuji set up a hunt by using Akane's friend, Yuki, as bait to lure Kagami into an abandoned subway station. Upon entering the station, Kagami discovers Yuki in a train car and loses contact with Akane. The two must evade Sengyuji and his canine drones as a curious Makishima observes from above. Genoza scolds Akane for letting Kagami go on his own, but Masayaka chastises him over his treatment of her. Meanwhile, Makishima rigs the hunt to give Kagami a chance to create a working transponder and, as a result, Kagami makes contact with the group outside, and they go in after him. With a drone delivering him a Dominator, Kagami manages to outwit Sengyuji and kill him, although he also takes some shots in the process. Just then, Yuki is captured by Makishima, with Kagami too weak to follow. As Masayaka tends to Kagami's injuries, Akane goes alone to pursue Makishima. To her shock, she discovers her Dominator is useless against him as his crime coefficient levels are too low, with Makishima attributing his ability to cheat Sibyl's judgment to his own free will. He gives Akane the opportunity to try killing him with Sengyuji's shotgun, but she finds herself unable to do it and is forced to helplessly watch Makishima kill Yuki right before her eyes. In the end, Akane tells everyone that Makishima is immune to the Dominator. 3 years ago, Yaoi, a former guitarist, was institutionalized after she's detected as a latent criminal. As she anxiously waits for release so she can play the guitar again, she is approached by Kagami, who was still an inspector, and Genoza about a series of crimes occurring in the area she was once familiar with. She initially rejects their offer until Kagami gives her some guitar strings, which reminded her of a guitarist she admired. Rina Takazaki. When the club they are investigating gets set on fire after Kagami's enforcer partner Mitsuru Sasayama jumps the gun in approaching culprits dealing with Molotov cocktails, Yayoi decides to search for Rina, only to discover she is part of a resistance group selling the Molotov cocktails in the hopes of overthrowing the Sybil system. Yayoi tries to stop Rina but finds she is unable to use the Dominator that Kagami gave her, as she was not actually an enforcer yet, and Rina escapes. Afterwards, Yayoi resolves to become an enforcer and leaves the rehabilitation center. Genoza meets up with the head of the Public Security Bureau, Joushu Kase, about Makishima, who confidentially reveals to him about the real culprit of the specimen case, Tauma Kuzaburo, 3 years ago, who happens to be criminally asymptomatic just like Makishima. She urges him to keep any doubts away from the public eye, as Makishima's existence contradicts the efficacy of the Sybil system, and orders him to bring Makishima in alive. Following Yuki's funeral, Akane agrees to undergo a memory scoop to provide a photo fit of Makishima based on her memories of the incident, despite warnings from others that it may damage her psychopaths. Despite reliving the traumatizing memory, the memory scoop is successfully completed without her psychopaths reaching into dangerous levels, providing a photo fit image of Makishima to aid in the investigation. Later, Genoza discusses with Masayaka, who is actually his father, about how Akane manages to keep her psychopaths from becoming clouded. A man in a helmet breaks into a pharmacy, kills the staff, and departs with drugs. When the MWSPB arrives on the scene, they find his crime coefficient was not high enough to set off the alarm. The same man attacks a woman in public, brutally beating her to death with a hammer in front of a crowd and a psychopath scanner. Later, the team learn that more culprits, wearing the same helmets, rob an armored car. Kagami deduces that the second crime would have a motive, leading their investigation to a man named Junmei Ido who had a grudge against the victim. As Ido attempts to escape, Kagami deduces that the helmets copy the low crime coefficients of innocent bystanders, thus help criminals avoid apprehension. With Akane and Masayaka's help, he apprehends the murderer. As footage of the helmet killings appear on the internet, the helmets are distributed to more criminals who begin committing more horrendous crimes out in the open, prompting bloodthirsty revenge from the public in the name of self-defense. As the MWPSB suppress the riots, Kagami deduces that the riots are intended to draw the police away from the Health and Welfare Ministry's Nana Tower facility, where the Sybil system is located. As Makishima and his gang break in, Kagami, Akane, and Kagori head to the scene. As Akane, Kagami, and Kagori enter the Nana Tower, Makishima intends to act as a diversion at the top of the tower, while Guseong reaches the core of the Sybil system in the hidden basement. Kagami and Akane decide to chase after Makishima to the top of the tower as Kagori descends to the basement. After descending to the hidden basement, Kagori has lost connection with the network and discovers the truth behind the Sybil system. Meanwhile, Kagami engages in a battle with Makishima. Makishima beats Kagami but is knocked out by Akane. Kagami instructs Akane to kill Makishima, but Akane was able to control her emotions. Meanwhile, Kagori defeats the guards and confronts Guseong at the heart of the Sybil system, who is suddenly killed by Kase, who is revealed to be a cyborg and proceeds to override her Dominator to fire at Kagori. After Makishima is taken in and the riots are brought under control, Kagami remains curious about how Makishima will be judged, as well as the whereabouts of Kagori. Later that day, Kase tells Genoza that Makishima's case has been taken out of the MWPSB's hands and orders him to investigate Kagori's whereabouts, much to the ire of both Genoza and Kagami. Later, Makishima is confronted by Kase, who reveals herself as Kuzaburo and shares a cybernetic body with Kase. He explains to Makishima about the true nature of the Sybil system, which is revealed to be a supercomputer network composed of human brains of criminally asymptomatic individuals like him. Kuzaboru offers Makishima to become a part of the system, but he refuses and instead kills Kuzaboru and escapes from the transit, which is supposed to take him to the Ministry of Welfare before briefly contacting Kagami about his escape, as Genoza discovers that he is unauthorized to investigate the crash site of Makishima's carrier. Kase reassigns him on recapturing Makishima and requests that Kagami should be taken off the case. Kagami suspects that something is amiss behind the whole order, believing there is something Kase is hiding from them. Agreeing with him, Genoza arranges for Kagami to be transferred to Division 2, who are in charge of investigating Kagari's whereabouts. However, they are confronted by Kase, who tries to get Genoza to kill Kagami, but luckily Akane knocks him out with paralyzer mode before anything can happen. Upon awakening, Kagami borrows one of the helmets from Shin and retrieves keys to a safe house from Masayaka before leaving the MWPSB, explaining in a letter to Akane that the only way where he can stop Makishima is to step outside of the law. Genoza, whose hue is now problematic, eschews intensive therapy in order to work on retrieving Kagami and Makishima. He argues with Masayaka over his softness and declares his intention to see his obsession through to the end. Kagami, meanwhile, goes to visit Sega in order to figure out Makishima's next move. The two surmise that Makishima might attempt to meddle with Japan's food supply in order to force open borders for the country. Shin does her best to comfort Akane, and Kase connects with Sybil to determine their new pawn. Later, Akane is contacted by the Sybil system itself, declaring that it will tell her the truth about everything. The Sybil system reveals itself to Akane, claiming that she understands the necessity of the system, if not its justifiability, asking her for cooperation to apprehend Makishima alive. Makishima finds the professor who is responsible for the Hyper Oats and murders him after finding the information he seeks, taking along the man's fingers and eyeballs as a measure against biometric security. Kagami arrives on the scene not long after and leaves a clue for the MWSPB in the man's airpipe. Meanwhile, Akane contacts Sybil and convinces it to withdraw the execution order for Kagami should she accomplishes its request to capture Makishima alive. Thanks to her detective work, they quickly find Kagami's clue and learns about the situation as Makishima finally reaches his destination, with Kagami right on his trail. As Makishima works on reprogramming the virus, both Kagami and the MWPSB arrive at the factory, with Kagami instructing Akane that they need to shut down power to the facility to bypass the security. Prior to arriving, Akane manages to convince the Sybil system to keep her Dominator on paralyzer mode with the safety unlocked regardless of crime coefficient to use as a trump card against Makishima and Kagami. After the power is shut down, Kagami sneaks into the facility, whilst Akane and Yayoi head to the control room in case Makishima attempts to activate the emergency power. Finding the control room empty, Akane comes to realize that Genoza and Masayaka are in danger, as Genoza becomes trapped under a container after tripping up a trap. Masayaka comes face to face with Makishima. Although Masayaka appears to get the upper hand, Makishima threatens to blow Genoza up with a stick of dynamite, with Masayaka ultimately sacrificing himself to save his son. As Genoza remains horrified by his father's death, Kagami pursues Makishima and prepares to engage in a knife fight with him. Kagami manages to stab Makishima during their fight, but Akane interrupts their fight. Makishima escapes in a truck and Akane shoots out the wheels. Makishima crashes in a field. Kagami sets Akane aside and then pursues the heavily bleeding Makishima. Resigned to his fate, Makishima kneels and waits for Kagami to execute him. Afterwards, the Sybil system tells Akane that they intend to reveal themselves in the future, where the public will come to accept it. Though Akane responds that someone will pull their plug in the future, the system responds asking her to fight for a better future. In the succeeding 2 months, Genoza becomes an enforcer and visits his father's grave. Shin and Yayoi reflect on the changes in the MWSPB, and a young new inspector arrives on the scene. At the end of the episode, Kagami departs a small cabin room from an unspecified ship. If you want me to recap Psycho Pass Season 2, comment down below. See you next time.